Alright guys, TacticalRab here, and today hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. And amid all the optimism over the last few days that Fortress Control is going to be gone and the new map Himmelmatt Expo is going to come through for Control at least, and maybe Search and Destroy as well, Infinity Ward have other ideas. A massive glitch in the game as it stands means the pros really can't play on the new patch update for their CDL matches. The longer this goes on, the more likely it is that Fortress remains in the map pool for Control. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Again, loads of subs over the last few days as well. Really appreciate that. Let's dive into Rostermania though, first of all. So as Doug says, Rostermania has begun. Scrims are getting cancelled. Players are texting me who they should play with. I'm sitting here smiling. So it's all chaos in the challenger scene. Probably sparked by at least one change in the professional scene, maybe more over the coming days, but certainly we have the London change. And that was confirmed last night by PaulEhx. He says unrestricted free agent, right? So PaulEhx is officially out of there now. This is pretty much expected given the fact that Nasty was clearly more comfortable and has been frying lately, to be honest, on the flex role. That leaves Paul in a tricky spot where he's not really going to be an SMG. He was a good player, I thought, in Cold War. He was pretty good at the start of Vanguard as well, but you know, he's never been as good on LAN as he has been online, and despite him showing some promise over the last couple of years, I think he's one of those players that inevitably is going to be on the fringes of being good enough to be in the Pro League and at the top of challenges, right? That's just how some players are over the last several years. Paul, I think, is one example. Would be in the league if there were 16 teams, or with 12. It's pretty tricky, right? And just the way that London have gone, the fact that Scraps has been playing well and Nasty's doing well on the flex, and of course the seam is very valuable to the team and isn't going anywhere. Paul was the obvious man to replace, to bring in at what they're planning, I guess, as a superstar SMG talent to the team in iLLeY that are trying to get from the challenger side. So that's now official. PaulEhx is out of there. Don't know what his next step's going to look like. And also, Zero is gone as well. This is a big surprise to me, actually, that Zero, of course, was, well, I thought a phenomenal AO at the start of the Vanguard season on this very team. Had a good season last year on the whole, especially at the start of it, of course. They got that top 3 placing at Major 1 last year, right? London Royal Ravens. Since then, it's been all downhill. Zero got dropped this year in kind of, to me, surprising fashion. He is a very flexible player, can run many different possible roles, but what they need now isn't really what Zero is going to provide. He's not really going to be a full-time SMG, I don't imagine, nowadays, like he almost briefly was back in the Black Ops 4 days for Red Reserve, whatever it was at the time. Like Zero kind of did it all over those years. I mean, 6 years ago, Zero was an unbelievable player in Infinite Warfare on the NV4, and over the years to follow, he ran all sorts of different roles to great success, one of the greatest European players ever in terms of raw ability, to be honest, and now he's getting forced out of London. I guess they just don't see that they need to pay him the money to stay there on the bench, I guess, because I don't really feel like he's going to add too much value, which is pretty tough, right? I mean, especially if you're, well, they bring in one player in, so to get rid of 2 players to bring 1 player in feels a little bit, you know, unclear as to why exactly. I guess they're going to put one of their coaches as the substitute, right? But Zero's now out of this spot, and again, it's a tough thing for Zero, right? Because is he going to get another spot back in the league? It's pretty hard to imagine that it's going to come easily, and as Bean says, you know, keep your head up, you're not done yet, fella, and Zero's like, well, maybe I'm just getting forced out here, really. We're not done. You maybe not, but me, he reckons he's passing the torch over to the next generation of European talent, as in Beans on the Boston side. So, yeah, if Zero's career comes to an end like this, it'd be kind of sad to see, but it happens a lot, right, with players that have been great back in the day, and then individually, maybe they're not quite the same player now as they used to be a few years ago, but still they can be valuable, but there just isn't the team there or the relationships or anything to make this happen. So, you know, that's just an update on that side of things. Also wanted to mention for you guys, as we discuss here, the cards, because I think it's quite clear looking at the numbers that, yes, they were negative in all the game modes, but Nasty was their standout player. Scraps was pretty good as well. I think Asim was probably more impactful here than his numbers suggest. He's not an all-star, as some would like to say, but, you know, it seems still a solid player, and paired with a powerful SMG partner, which PaulEhx really wasn't, they could have had a lot more success, I think, at this stage than they actually did have. And if iLLeY proves to be pretty good on this team, if that is the change they make, then I think this team has some pretty high upside potential, because they were nearly close to making some big upsets this stage. They weren't actually terrible, like in their hardpoint, their Search and Destroy, pretty good all things considered, but you know, just wasn't enough. Still another top 12, and that leaves them with barely any points in the league as it stands. The other thing I was going to mention, though, as we discuss the Rokkr cards, or at least I'll just share the Rokkr cards, because it's not pretty. I don't know if there's really much more to discuss here. Whether they'll make changes, we'll see. The 0-8 in Search and Destroy was bad, but yesterday I said to you guys that New York Subliners, right, they started out the year very strongly. Then they've fallen off since then, a top 8 to top 12, and maybe they'll stick it out to try and make the recovery, which might be wise, it might not prove to be wise. I was asking the question, like, when's the last time a team won at the start and then won again at the end? Now, you guys were like, well, FaZe did that in Cold War, which is very true. They won Major 1, they also won Champs. But I think the FaZe story is a bit different to what the subliners are going through now, and also to what a team like OpTic has gone through in the past, when they win the first event, then they fall off, then they make the return. I'm thinking of something like the Black Ops 4 season for OpTic, where they won in Vegas, then they fell off a bit. They came back to be a top 3 team at the end because they decided to stick by the roster, which is probably the right decision at the time, but they still never quite got back to where they needed to be to win a championship again. FaZe, after they won Major 1, and also Major 1 in Cold War was online, and then it went to LAN, so I think that's already a little bit of a difference there, just generally. But also, that event was in March time, right, at the start of March, because I think Cold War had the same kind of timeline as we did in Vanguard, so that was like a good 4 months after the release of the game. So the first event, if it's happening in March, is usually going to be more kind of, more representative of how the rest of the year is going to go and who are the best teams. When there's an event in December and the game comes out in November, as it was this year, or game comes out late October, whatever, if there's an event December, usually there will be one team that's ahead of the curve and, just understands the game better than the others and will win that early event, and then won't be quite as good once the other teams catch up. So to me, that's more likely what's happened there with the subliners. And also, FaZe and Cold War never had a fall off, right? They were always the best team pretty much all year. Okay, they've lost an event to a couple of these guys at one point during Major 2 and also at Major 5, but they were always the best team, right? They never had like a fall off, and then they tried to make the comeback with the same roster. So to me, I still think for subliners, they've got to consider it. I'm not sure trying to compare themselves, if they are, to the FaZe situation really checks out all that much. But let's talk about then the situation with Fortress Control. So we saw yesterday the numbers, and even JP Krez follows up and says, thinking about it more, pretty remarkable and sad that people would say, oh, we've got 2 ticks guys, that's a good offense, to be completely serious. But as Envoy actually says, was it as bad of a map as people believe? Because he says, controls like Fort and Gab obviously not good for the pool, they're not good to play, not good to watch, but still, is he faded in thinking the better team won most of the time because the better team would usually get the guaranteed defense and therefore win the map? And I think you see this when Vegas play the map, like they of course lost to Marky B, but LAG are actually pretty good at that map, and obviously Vegas were terrible at it. And when Vegas played Boston on it, it was quite clear that despite the fact that Vegas won their first defense, the Boston were by far the better team. They were getting way more done on their offenses, they were having way more shutdown defenses versus Vegas. They ended up winning an offense, of course, but it was quite clear that even if Vegas won their second defense, it would have gone round 5. Boston would have got the defense because they were just straight up better all across the board, and then they would have won the defense almost certainly. So there's an argument to say that while Fortress is not good and pretty terrible, maybe the better team does win the majority of the time, even though maybe the pros think it's more of a 50-50. But regardless, we wanted to be replaced with this map coming into the fray, but it might not happen thanks to another classic from Infinity Ward. So we saw Crowder say yesterday the pros seem to agree that for Control it is far better than Fortress. It's definitely going to come in for that mode. For Search and Destroy, it's a maybe. I think honestly it's better from what I understand than at least Fortress Search and maybe Mikado Search, but the teams maybe won't be able to agree on what should go, because some teams will want Fortress to go Search and Destroy, some teams will want Mikado to go for Search and Destroy, depending on how good they are at Fortress. And if we can't get a majority there between the pro teams, even if Expo is clearly better, which it may not be, then it's going to be tough to make it happen. Hardpoint, for various reasons, such as the one I just mentioned, it's probably not going to come in, but still, we want it in the game, certainly for Control. However, Crowder then says last night, because then obviously Doug comes out and says, remove Hydro, remove Fortress Control, remove Fortress Search, and add them in for Hardpoint Control Search immediately. Now, Drazah's like, don't tweak, right? Maybe he doesn't want Hydro to go or whatever. And other teams, for example, Prolute in the replies, or, Zinx is kind of saying he forgot Mikado exists, so he wants Mikado to go for maybe Hardpoint and Search and Destroy rather than the other way around. So the pro teams probably won't be able to agree on this, which is why it might not come in for all modes. But for Control, there is a unanimous agreement. The issue is, though, is that the game as it currently stands cannot be played with the new patch update. There's a death cam glitch in the game based on the recent patch update, mostly affecting Search and Destroy, and as a result, the pros can't really play on this new patch update. If they want to practice Search at all, they can't play on the new patch, which means they can't have the new patch downloaded, which means they don't have the new map, so they can't practice it. So based on the Infinity Ward problems that they've once again generated with the new patch update, currently Expo can't be added into the rotation.
Players play on the old patch right now because of the death cam glitch that exists in the new patches. So therefore, if they want to add the new map in the game, they have to update to the new patch. If you update to the new patch, then you have a death cam glitch for every single map in the game, including Search and Destroy, and it completely ruins Search and Destroy. So the problem you run into, if you want to fix Fortress Control, you have to ruin Search and Destroy as a whole entire game mode. Because if you update to get the new map, you get you see what I mean? Do you see the problem?
So this death cam thing has happened in Call of Duties for years, and occasionally it will make an appearance, and they've got to find a way to solve this quite quickly, to be honest. But usually the way it works in Search and Destroy, when you die, sometimes your camera angle will just kind of like move to a corner of the room, and you'll just be able to see from a third-person view above the map at times. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it lasts for a very long period of time. Sometimes you get a perfect bird's eye view of the bomb site where your team has just planted, and therefore you can, you know, just see if there's anyone defusing. So, and also you just get free information. It's obviously outrageously bad from a competitive perspective, mostly affecting search therefore, and as a result, you can't really play with this patch downloaded at the present time. So will Infinity Ward fix this? It's another classic, right? They've put the new patch update in, they've broken something, and whether they know how to fix it, I don't know, but the problem is for the pros is that they're trying to get practice on this and quickly. Now, thankfully, we've got a little bit of time before Major 4 begins, but the longer this goes on, the more the pros aren't able to really practice on Expo Control, and even though they know that it's the better map mode combination than Fortress, will they bring it in if there isn't enough time remaining? Let's say Infinity Ward take another week and a half, 2 weeks to fix this, and we're literally at the point where Major 4 is beginning, and, you know, they haven't been able to practice the map yet, they probably can't play it, because it's probably the Monday of the next set of games, so the Monday the 27th, I believe, of March, that's the Monday of when the matches begin on Friday, and it's probably around about then where the teams need to have let the league know their decision on this stuff so that they can adjust the rule set, right? And of course, people also want it in ranked play, right? But if the pros aren't going to play it yet, then it's not going to be in ranked instead of Fortress Control yet, unfortunately, as that is. So, yeah, I don't know, right? Maybe the pros can just add it in anyway and just pray that by the time that, you know, that the league actually comes around, the glitch is fixed and therefore they can play on the new patch update and therefore they can play it. And maybe the lack of practice won't matter too much if it's straight up a better map. But yeah, some teams aren't going to be so happy about this, and it's a serious issue right now. Now, Doug says, look, who cares? Not really that deep. Just run it anyway with the new map rather than the old ones. And okay, maybe it ruins Search and Destroy, but it's not too much of a big deal. The pros kind of disagree with Doug on this one, and therefore Doug is like, look, hey, Infinity Ward, can you fix the death cam and sprint glitch in private match, please? Also, the sprint glitch that's going on with the tac sprint stuff, bit of a shambles. And then as Doug, well, as Crone says as well, fix death cam glitch and tac sprint plus ratio. So that's the thing. There's a couple of issues right now, and Infinity Ward are aware of some problems, but whether they'll get to these ones in time is, well, obviously a pretty big concern, because if the pros can't download the new patch update and play on it, especially for their league PCs, then they can't get the rule set changed in time, therefore we're stuck with Fortress Control. And if we're stuck with it, let's say for Major 4, then, you know, would they change it for Major 5? They probably would still, but then again, right, when you're going into the final Major of the season, and then you've got the championship to come, and you need probably 9 of 12 teams to agree to this for it to actually, for the change to happen. If, you know, 4 teams hold out against it, then you already have issues. Just before we close out the video here, wanted to mention Crone's MVP ladder. I voted in this, many other voted in this as well. To me, aBeZy is still the clear #1 right now. Like, he's the best player in the game. He's the most valuable player in the game. I thought having Cellium here, especially as #2, was a little bit too high. I know I talked about FaZe, of course, in quite some depth last night. Scrappy is certainly up here now as well on the top 5. Hydra is still here. I know that some people would put Hydra off it. I think I just about still put Hydra on my top 5. If they have another poor performance, I'll drop him off. But I think individually, Hydra's still been great, and he was phenomenal at the start of the year. If subliners do somehow turn it around, then he is in the conversation for MVP of the season. Pred, though, despite having won nothing, has been so good that he's still here. Now, I've also got to say that it feels maybe questionable. Not, I think I put Dashy on my top 5, actually, because I think he's been super important to this OpTic team, their turnaround over the last couple of weeks, or really since they dropped him and picked him back up. Like, you know, that's been a big change for Dashy individually, and he was obviously unreal at Major 2 and was a crucial part of their turnaround here at Major 3. So I think, to me, I put Dashy on my top 5 as well. But Pred has been so good that despite not really doing anything in terms of results, he's still getting his name on these leaderboards. And if they do anything, Seattle Surge, Pred is going to leapfrog quite a few of these guys, I imagine. And of course, Scrap not just going for Rookie of the Year, but also one better than that as well. But very much interested your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.